Welcome in, Therapy Flow community. We are talking about items that you can leverage for practice growth. This week on the 4 C's of leverage, we are doing a deep dive on capital, on the money, on the whole spend money, make money premise of things, why that's right, why that's wrong, and everything in between as you build your private practice. Let's dive in.
Yeah, I think there's maybe like one big spot. We touched on it maybe last week just a little bit, but it takes you the same amount of time to deploy $1 of money that it does $10,000 of money or even $100,000 of money. So it takes the same amount of time. If you went to go buy a car, maybe you're spending $20,000 or $50,000 on a car. Takes you the same amount of time to make that decision and send the money to the car dealership. Just like if you decide that you want to go spend to buy a yacht or something really, really expensive, it's the same process, same time. Maybe there's a little bit of a stretch on your decision making, but it's a massive purchase that maybe operates at a higher level, but the time is still the same there. And that's what you're really getting from something like deploying capital, as you can significantly scale up your input and output for the same unit of time here when you're using capital. And I think the biggest spot to maybe start with on some of this is the make money. You have to spend money to make money kind of axiom that exists out there. It is true, but I think we've seen a lot of people do really bad at that. You have to have a really good system to deploy money into. Otherwise, you will get burned. So sometimes deploying money might look like we've seen private practices that buy a huge office space and they rent, maybe it's a 3-story office space and they rent the top 2 floors or something like that. And so they make some money back from it and they own the office space that their practice is in. That's a really interesting way to deploy money. But maybe they weren't so good at real estate and they didn't know what they were doing being the landlord. And so it sounds like a good idea. You're deploying all this cash, but then maybe you made a really, really bad investment choice. Or similarly, maybe you're spending a lot of money on ads and you're like, you know what, let's double, triple, quadruple it. But the initial system wasn't a good system. Like you didn't have that locked in. And so you end up spending just a ton of money and it goes nowhere. And so there's definitely some, just like all of these input points, there's definitely some pros and cons on some of these. Josh, what are some critical money errors that maybe people are making here?
I mean, it goes a little bit to the system piece of things where you really need to be thinking about, are you throwing like a frisbee or are you throwing a boomerang? And that's really your system that you're putting your money into. If you throw a frisbee, it's going to go one direction and go and roll wherever it goes. Maybe it's pointed in the right place, but it is like going to the restaurant and you spend money and you eat it and get a little energy. Maybe it keeps you going, but there is no return from the money just spent in the restaurant. A boomerang, right? You throw it and it really should come back to you. In this situation, if you throw money boomerangs, if you invest capital into proper systems, it should return to you. So if we think about critical money errors, places where clinicians are setting up their practice for one-sided money pits instead of something that sets them up to return, you can't talk about this without talking about overpaying clinicians and underpaying yourself or under-resourcing your practice. And we have talked about this so often, and every industry expert, whether it's because they've done thousands of hours of consulting with group practices, or they have been accounting professionals in the space running books for thousands of practices, or they're a scaled out practice owner with 50, 100 clinicians and have figured out this themselves and have worked with hundreds of others. Every single practice owner that we talk to or expert that we talk to, this is a bottleneck many practice owners are making a huge mistake on. They're overpaying their clinicians, and they're probably, as a result, underpaying themselves, and or there's not enough leftover capital for any of the other goals inside of the practice. You really need to aim for 55 to 65% of total like cash collection from an individual person to be the max paid. So let's say you collect $100 per session, or let's say you collect $100,000 of revenue inside of your practice. Only 55 to maybe upwards of 65% of that can be allocated towards the pay package your clinician receives from you. And if you start going above that, it's going to have some really nasty effects on the rest of the practice.
Yeah, if you're looking at um I like the boomerang analogy. If you're looking at that boomerang analogy, paying your clinicians too much is just like there's not enough air under the boomerang's blades, and it's just, even if it has the will to kind of come back and maybe it starts coming back, it's just really looking like it's struggling on the way back there. And so don't fall into this pit. You need money left over. And ultimately, if you're constructing your practice in a way that's sustainable and simple, I think simple has to be the word here. Although we want to pay our clinicians more, the job that they're performing is it's a simple job, right? They come in and they do their therapy work that they've been licensed to do, and they're maybe taking notes, and they have just a couple things with administration that they're handling. And so it's a simple job in that the private practice sort of handles the other stuff, and you can reduce your cost by giving some of the other jobs to some of the other people on staff. Another error is just avoiding money education as a whole. When we're talking about avoiding money education, you as a business owner need to have a minimum level of awareness around finances, and you need to have a passable level of information around finances for your private practice. Otherwise, I'm not saying you're going to get duped, but you'll probably get duped. You'll probably get swayed to doing something that just doesn't make sense too much for your practice. You'll probably put yourself in a position where you think you're throwing a boomerang, but really you're just throwing a frisbee. And so taking some time to get educated is really important.
Just like when someone becomes a lawyer and they're diving in law school to everything, and it's like the language of law is pretty much different. And the reason why you need a lawyer is in order to decipher the court cases and the terminology and everything else in legal speak. And that's what it's called, right? Legal speak, because it's just so entrenched. Money attached to your business is very similar, where it's like speaking in a different language, because we're not just talking about, hey, how many referrals do you get on a monthly basis for your therapy practice? We're saying, hey, what is the cost per lead? And that is a term, right, that you can start to measure. And if you know that terminology, you can go to a marketing provider and you can say, hey, what's your average cost per lead? And what's your average through the channels that you run marketing for, your cost to acquire one client? And let's run a ratio on that, on our cost to fulfill and our speed of cash and fill in the blank and all these other numbers that you can utilize. And you don't need to know all of it, right? But as your practice grows and gets bigger, the necessity of you being operationally fluent in the money layers for your practice is very important. So if you're going to choose to own real estate, we have to understand the implications of that money layer. If we're going to choose to spend money on marketing, we have to understand the conversation there. If we're going to choose to employ therapists, we have to understand the tax implications and the money implications on our pay percentage, and not just the word itself, but its economic system. And that's why you need to pursue education in those different buckets as the practice is growing. And this kind of ties into another big money mistake that we see practice owners making, which is playing investment catch up. So let's take marketing as an example. If you underinvest in the boomerang of marketing, we know that if we spend good money on marketing, it typically returns to us in new clients and in cash collected. If we underinvest in that, then not only are we going to have to pay the cost to rebuild momentum and to catch up to where we want to be, we'll then also still have to pay the cost for growth. If you've dove into like retirement economics and you see the analogy of someone investing at 20 years old at like $100 a month, and the person starting at like 35-year-old at like $500 a month, well, the person who started 15 years earlier with 5 times less the amount invested, has more money at the end of retirement. And marketing and a lot of things in practice stays the same way. When you choose to turn it off and say, no, I'll do that later, and you don't have a measure of consistency, once you realize you need it again, to overpay. You over index how much it costs because of how much of a necessity it is now. And mistakes happen and more money is spent than initially would have been required.
Yeah, I think I have to bucket in not finishing your systems into this bucket. So you just brought up a point about spending on marketing here. And if you're spending on marketing, but your marketing isn't like returning back to you, that's like you throw out your boomerang and you have to go walk out in the field to go get the boomerang, and then you're throwing it again and you're like trying to make it back to the original spot. The same thing here is true if you don't actually complete the system that you're working on. In this case, marketing, but this could exist for recruiting. This could exist for training in your team. This could exist for culture. This can really exist for anything that you're spending resources on to build up. And so if you run into obstacles that you never actually learn how to work through, you will continue to hit those obstacles. And so this investment catch up looks like that. It looks like the stop start. It looks like the incomplete or inconsistent work that you're putting in or not putting in. And it looks like just a general maybe unfamiliarity of the actual system that it takes to build and run a private practice, maybe from a really logical standpoint, right? So I think like emotionally, we're like, you know what? I don't want to do blogs anymore. I don't want to do whatever else anymore. I mean, from a logical standpoint, it's the things that are required, certainly for this space. So I think that moves us on really easily into the fourth section here, which is just short time horizons, just 2 short time horizons. We've seen private practices move really, really fast, and we've seen private practices move really, really slow towards their goals. And I think consistently, there's an interesting quote that just is humans tend to overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And I think that's just like the perfect way to encapsulate this is there's practice owners who want to grow really big, really fast, and they seek the information and they execute in a way that allows them to move fast. And then there's practice owners that don't have a method, maybe, or don't seek the help that they need. And then they beat themselves up when their time horizons were too short and they didn't know what to do and they didn't execute at a high level. And so if you have really short time horizons, I think you end up under leveraging something that you're like putting a lot of time and effort into. And so what investments do you have today that maybe you're putting in now and will pay off in a month or 2 months or a year or 5 years or even 10 years? And sometimes I don't think we think of the exit when we start things. And so like, do you want to be in business for 10 years? Do you just want to make all your money in 5 years and then quit? Like, what's the situation? So maybe do a little bit of reflecting and be practical about when things should or shouldn't be paying off.
I mean, if you kind of think about it, some of the fastest microwave dinners, for instance, or fast food, sometimes those are the least nutritious options for your money, so to speak. And so similarly, if you're looking for better boomerangs, a lot of like capital in the large capital markets, it's about 35-year time frame in the stock market, and it's about a 10-year lockup in capital investing in a new startup. It's about the longest plays have the lowest feedback loops attached to them. Not that there isn't short-term strategies, there are, but if we're only choosing those, probably leaving a lot on the field. But let's flip this around and say, how should you be leveraging your money in some significant ways? I think one of the, especially if you start to enter into group practice land, is really start to understand possibly how you could buy your building and buy the space that you operate out of. And this gives you 2 leverage points on this. Number one is your cash on cash return instead of paying rent, paying that as an asset that your business owns is really significant for just like owning your own home as a forced saving mechanism. It's not always going to be best. Sometimes that capital needs to go to other places instead of owning the business in terms of, hey, where am I going to get this ROI? But especially if you know you're going to be in a building or you know you want that build out, you can have the most options with the most fluidity by owning the real estate. We even know some practices that they'll buy a building, fill it with tenants, keep it there, wait till it hits a little bit of maturity, and then they'll move into it itself down the road once it makes sense in some other pieces. And so there's options there too.
Yeah, I think this is like the cost reduction side of things. And so, how can you spend money to reduce costs later? And sometimes that even looks like having um, more vertical integration into what you're doing. And so, for those of you who are using um, like a credentialing and billing company, and maybe you're starting to, you're paying a percentage on something like that. Maybe there's a way for you to have a staff member and it consolidates some of those costs down. Or possibly even if you're looking at expanding instead of reducing costs, maybe you're looking to expand and you're like, you know what, I want to move into a different state. Oftentimes, I think a lot of private practice owners kind of want to just like bootleg it, but you don't have to. You can just buy another practice, right? You can go into the state, like
Yeah.
choose a state methodically, find something that has a few clinicians. That way you don't have to recruit, you have to market, you've got the caseload, and just see if some of those individuals are willing to, or whoever owns it, is just willing to sell.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting way to say, hey, we've got this amount of money, or I'm open to getting an SBA loan, something like that, because you know how to build a practice. You have another practice you can kind of collateralize on, and then you just run the practice, and it's that easy. And you have another practice, and you have the clinicians, and you got the caseload. So, and then you just pay it down over time, right, based on the profits. So.
You've already spent a rather large amount of money on pursuing education. That's how you got your licensure. So you can also capitalize on investing in more education for yourself, especially probably non-traditional programs, coaching, communities, other forms of marketing, conferences. We've got the group Practice Con coming up. There will be probably 50 to 60 growing close to seven figures and beyond seven figures group practice owners all here in Chicago in September, learning and growing together, investing in themselves for the future of their practice growth. And so whether it's online community education or big impact weekend like that, where you can get it all in one weekend, all in one room, investing in your education can be huge as a business owner to learn everything that you didn't learn in grad school about the business and some of the layers that we're talking about here. But that also can look like investing in education for your clinicians as well. And so what's great is some of the best practices we know as part of the pay package, they've got line items for continuing educations, for higher tier certifications. Hey, let's move our clinicians through EMDR or Gottman training or fill in the blank. So that way we can get a more specialized segment of our clinicians. And as a result, get higher fees, get more consistency, work with a different population, get a brand build in our community for being known for something that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So further education as a business owner and even building out systems of education for your practice, for your clinicians, great way to spend your money.
Yeah. Moving on to kind of something kind of just right parallel to it, but if you hire experienced staff members, that is an incredible cost saver. Incredible cost saver. Sometimes it costs you a little bit more to get someone who's done the job. Right? Maybe it's your time finding the person, or maybe it's like running those Indeed ads to just get enough people to see the listing that you've got kind of going on. But if you find someone who's done the job and done it in a way that they've grown another practice or grown another business similar, you're going to find that even paying them 50% more than the market rate is cheap. And
Yeah.
so hiring those experienced individuals, it's going to save you time on training. It's going to find you someone who actually knows what they're doing, and it's going to find someone who can actually complete the job. That's just ultimately the probably one of the highest ROI things that you get in a private practice, since private practice is so people oriented. And
Part of leveraging capital is sometimes de-risking the choice. So you have to ask yourself, hey, what's the likelihood that this will work? Typically, right, the higher the experience might come with a premium rate. If you go and you talk to the surgeon fresh out of school, a couple years back, I had a dental implant. I was talking to my brother-in-law who also had one, and he said, hey, as he was doing his research, he revealed that there, some dental surgeon, they've done maybe 20 to 30 of the dental implants so far. And hey, they have to start somewhere. But if you can do the work, hey, this person over here, they've done 13,000 dental implants across their surgery. Well, even if this person's a little bit more expensive, what's the likelihood that you're going to have the experience that you want with them? And paying that premium de-risks the situation. So whether that's from website to recruitment firms, to your lawyer, to your marketing professional, like we're a certified Google Ads partner. We pay money and we make our team, which costs us money, to go through that certification. And that costs us something, but you benefit from that if you're a client of ours because of the level of work we go through to secure those certifications that the person down the street who might be $200 or $500 a month cheaper, they might not have those layers of experience. And so money sometimes spent that way de-risks the situation significantly.
yeah, when we're looking at maybe spending money at a higher degree too, investing your time and energy into automations, maybe even artificial intelligence, or just systems in general. Like I think on our last video, I talked about robots, right? If you can spend something one time or spend a low cost monthly to get your work done at a high degree or in bulk, like that's just a great way to save you time, headache, heartache, and otherwise, and then create consistency inside of your business. Now, automations don't replace people, not yet, but maybe soon. And if you're using an automation, it can certainly make a job that felt like it was just hammering pegs into wood feel more like a job that you're just hitting a domino down, letting it do its thing, and you can go focus on something else. So spending time and investing in those systems is going to be really, really helpful.
A couple other quick ones. Put money in a high yield investment bank account, especially if you have a really large cash. You can look at like money market savings accounts. You can look at other things that your practice can hold if you want to maintain access to cash, but gets a better interest rate of return. You can build, I think of like building a room for content generation in your practice because content is huge. So if you want social media content, if you want good video, if you want other things, invest in the background, invest in the setup, invest in the microphone in order to get higher quality outcomes there. And then the last one I want to end on is just double down on what's already working. Double down on what's already working. We over index on the value of new things as business owners and just in life. Typically, new is better in most situations. And so we lead, hey, we need something new, something different. That's going to help us reach our goals. Likelihood in any department, you're spending money on something that's already working pretty well. A marketing channel, a networking strategy, a recruitment channel, something in there. An automations tool that has more available for you to spend more time or money investing in for more robust work in it. Those are places that you should sit down and say, hey, what is working well? And how can I spend more money on this so it can work even better or get an even better result? If you double down on what's already working, you're probably more than 2x the outcome that you're getting from it. I think Google Ads is a great example where typically you have a fixed cost, right? You've got this fixed cost for a great team running your Google Ads, but you've got this infinite push up with your budget. So if you double your budget, you're reducing your average cost per lead by a lot less. And there's optimization tactics you can use on those ads. So double down on what's already working.
Yeah, I think my final remark is just be intentional about what you're investing your money in and seek opportunities that allow you to spend more to get more out. Otherwise, you're just playing small games with your capital, and capital is meant to be an exponential factor for you.
Definitely. Two last things. If your group practice close to 7 figures and you're thinking about your next 7 figures of revenue you want to build, join us in September for Group Practice Con. We'd love to see you there. You can just go to grouppracticecon.com or look for it in the notes, and we'd love for you to join us. And then number two, if you haven't explored some of our other services lately, web management, marketing, coaching community, the CRM, a lot of the work that we do here is to equip you, not just with the information, but with the tools and the marketing success. So there's places for you to leverage your money with a great partner that will help grow your practice. We'll see you guys next time. Cheers.